So what if a knot in your shoulder isn't just, a byproduct of sleeping in a weird position?
Right, or just hunching over a laptop all week.
Exactly. I mean, we all do that. But what if that physical tension is quite literally blocking the Holy Spirit?
It's a huge question to ask.
It really is. Like, what if your nervous system is, at its very core, a biological radio, and it's designed specifically to tune into the divine?
But you've been walking around with the antenna completely bent out of shape.
Yes, completely bent. And today, we're looking at a diagnostic landscape that attempts to bridge that gap. The physical reality of human anatomy right alongside the absolute heights of spiritual experience.
It's a massive undertaking.
It is. So welcome to another deep dive. We are incredibly glad you are here with us. Today we have a mission that is, frankly, profound. We are looking at a massive stack of sources.
And when we say massive,
I mean, it ranges across centuries, across entirely different disciplines. We have Dr. Randolph Stone's incredibly intricate esoteric polarity therapy charts.
right, which are fascinating on their own.
Totally. And then we're combining those with ancient yogic maps of chakras and nadis, plus highly specific breakdowns of physical asanas, the sacred geometry of the
On
universe.
comprehensive clinical data on breath work and brainwave states.
It's just a phenomenal collection of human inquiry.
It really is. Because what we have in front of us is essentially a multidimensional attempt to map the architecture of the self.
Yeah,
But it's not just a biology lesson, it's an instruction manual.
that's the perfect way to put it. And that is the unique focus for our journey today. We are synthesizing all of this incredibly complex material.
The mechanics of Kriya, the electromagnetic body maps.
Right, and sensations traditionally described as kundalini. We're putting all of this into a unified, actionable practice focused entirely on Christ consciousness.
Which is such a specific, crucial lens.
It is. Our mission today is to understand how altering our physical and mental states through, precise geometric alignments, deep fascial stretching, and very specific breathing practices can prepare our physical vessels.
The word that became flesh.
Yes, exactly. How do we prepare this flesh for a deeper, more resonant communion with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit?
Well, it requires a fundamental paradigm shift. I mean, in how you view your own biology.
How so? Like, where do we start?
To achieve true communion, to actually experience that indwelling presence, rather than just reading about it as a theological concept, we have to understand the tabernacle we currently inhabit.
Right, the physical body.
Exactly. The sources we're looking at today reveal the human body as far more than just, a collection of meat and bone and chemical reactions.
It's mapped out as a highly sophisticated wireless energy circuit.
Yes. It is literally described as a geometric keyboard of nature.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, your body is a receiver designed to catch a specific divine frequency.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can start moving the body or manipulating the breath with this kind of divine purpose, we have to understand the actual architecture we're working with.
Wiring, basically.
Right. How is the word made flesh actually wired? I want to pull up a concept from this incredible document in our sources. It's chart number 3 from Dr. Stone's polarity therapy.
Ah, yes, the composite picture.
Yeah, the composite picture of the pattern forces of the body and their wireless circuits. When you look at this, it's jarring.
It really doesn't look like anything you'd see in a standard medical textbook.
Not at all. It doesn't look like Grey's Anatomy. It looks like a map of a magnetic field with a human being suspended right in the center of it.
It is a fascinating visual representation because it immediately challenges our materialist bias. Dr. Stone is illustrating what he calls the ultrasonic core.
Okay, the ultrasonic core. Break that down for us.
So if you look closely at the center of the figure in the chart, there's a fine white line running directly down the midline of the body.
Right down the center.
The chart explains that this ultrasonic energy forms the sixth ventricle of the brain and travels straight down the spinal cord.
And what is crucial here is how the source describes the nature of this line. It explicitly states that this is, quote, the primary energy of the soul.
Exactly.
Now, I have to jump in here and play the skeptic for a moment, because anyone with a medical background listening to this is going to throw a massive red flag.
Oh, absolutely.
Because medically speaking, human anatomy only recognizes 4 ventricles in the brain.
Right, the interconnected cavities where cerebrospinal fluid is produced.
Yeah. So when this source talks about a 6th ventricle, we aren't talking about literal gray matter or some hidden physical cavity that surgeons just missed, are we?
No, not at all. That is exactly the distinction we need to make here. We're looking at esoteric anatomy.
Okay, esoteric anatomy.
Right. The sixth ventricle, described here, is an energetic blueprint. Think of it as the invisible scaffolding upon which the physical tissue is built.
So it's sort of mapping onto the physical fluid, but it's not bound by it?
Exactly. It maps onto the physical cerebrospinal fluid, yes, but it is not constrained by physical boundaries. When the source calls it the primary energy of the soul, it's describing the animating spark.
The breath.
Yes, the very breath or spirit that continuously breathes life into the physical form. It builds and sustains all the other electrical and nervous currents in the body.
And the chart makes a point to note that this core is the internal gravity of the individual, right?
Yes, it is distinct from the physical gravity of the Earth. It is the true basis for individual therapy.
So if we view this through the lens of Christ consciousness, this ultrasonic core running from the center of the brain down the spine is the main conduit.
It is the central pillar of the temple.
The central pillar. Wow. And branching out from that central pillar, we have this incredible geometric blueprint.
Which brings us to chart number 10.
Yes. Chart number 10, it's called the five-pointed star in the human body as nature's geometric keyboard of lines of force.
Such a descriptive title.
It is. And it literally superimposes a perfect five-pointed star over the human torso and head.
And it assigns very specific, energetic, elemental, and physiological qualities to the different regions of this star.
Yeah.
It divides the physical body into these distinct zones of resonance.
Let's walk through them because it's brilliant. At the top point of the star, enveloping the head and neck area, the chart labels this as the Akash.
The ether.
Right, and specifically calls it the sound reservoir. It also notes the thyroid gland located there as the governor of oxygen intake.
Which becomes very important later when we discuss breath.
Absolutely. Then you move down to the upper chest, spanning the horizontal line of the star. This is the airy region, housing the heart and circulation.
Right.
You drop down to the center point, right at the umbilicus or navel, and it's labeled the fire of digestion.
And finally, the two bottom points of the star rest firmly on the pelvis, which is labeled the water basin.
What Dr. Stone is doing here is it's mapping the physical, fleshy anatomy to the elemental building blocks of creation.
And this links directly to another diagram in our stack, chart number 1.
Oh, the ovals.
Yes. This chart shows the mind working through what it terms 5 etheric pattern field ovals.
5 ovals stacked sequentially from head to toe.
Precisely. The first oval is the head, representing intelligence and direction, the fire of the mind.
Okay.
The second oval is the throat, which is the link for expression through speech, ether and sound.
Walking back to that sound reservoir.
Exactly. The third oval covers the entire chest cavity, expressing life energy to sustain the lungs and heart. That's air.
Got it.
The fourth oval is the abdomen, responsible for nourishing and sustaining the body, earth energy. And the fifth oval is the pelvis, perpetuating the pattern form, water energy.
What I find so compelling about this is how seamlessly it connects to the documents we have on sacred geometry.
Oh, the overlaps are undeniable.
They really are. We have a source here detailing the patterns of the universe. It lists geometric constants like the seed of life, which the text explicitly says all that exists can be built from.
Right, the fundamental building block.
Yeah, and it highlights the vesica Pisces, the overlapping of 2 circles with the same radius.
Yeah.
The source notes this represents the eyes, the yonic, the fundamental portal of creation.
And of course, the Triketra.
Yes. The 3 overlapping circles representing the Trinity. These aren't just pretty shapes you draw in a notebook during math class.
No, not at all.
The implication across all these sources is that the human body is constructed using these exact same divine geometric patterns. Your physical form is literally a fractal of the cosmic design.
That is the core realization here.
So the Triketra isn't just a theological concept of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It's echoed in the triune nature of our nervous system and consciousness, which we're definitely going to get into in a moment.
The seed of life is the geometry of the physical vessel itself.
So if I can try to synthesize this for the listener, are we saying the body is basically built like a tuning dial?
Yes, that's a great way to think of it.
Like a divine radio receiver laid out in these sacred geometric stars and ovals, and these zones are our dials for picking up the spirit's frequency.
That is perhaps the most accurate metaphor we can use. And it is why this matters so deeply on a practical level.
Because if the dials are broken...
Exactly. Because if you have a radio and the dials are jammed or the internal wires are frayed, you get static.
Right.
Chart number 10 makes a fascinating, highly clinical observation about this. It states that anterior tension is mostly functional and sensory reflex action from the viscera, plus emotional disturbance from pelvic organs.
Wait, wow.
And it goes on. Posterior tension is usually caused by resistance or blocks in the motor impulses.
Okay, I think anyone who's ever gone to a massage therapist or a chiropractor knows that basic premise, that we hold stress in our bodies.
The body keeps the score.
Exactly. But what is fascinating here is that Dr. Stone isn't just saying psychological tension causes a tight muscle. He is mapping it directly to a spiritual short circuit.
He is. The text explicitly says energy blocks by directional contacts in the line of force. It goes on to say that current resistance anywhere becomes reflex pain.
Reflex pain.
Right. If you view your body as a sacred geometric receiver for Christ consciousness, then a knot in your shoulder or a chronic ache in your lower back isn't just a random mechanical failure from sitting at a desk.
It's a block in the circuit.
It is a literal block in the spirit's wireless circuit. It is static on the line of communion.
Pain as static on the line of communion, that totally upends how we approach physical health.
It completely reframes it.
It elevates fitness from just, trying to look good in a swimsuit or staying out of the doctor's office. It makes it an active maintenance on the tabernacle.
Yes, you are maintaining the structural integrity of the receiver.
So that the sound reservoir in the throat and the airy region of the heart can actually resonate clearly with the divine frequency.
Precisely. You cannot divorce the biological reality from the spiritual aspiration. They are completely intertwined.
Okay, so if this geometric receiver is in place, these stars, these ovals, the central pillar, how does the signal actually travel without short-circuiting?
Well, we need to understand the wires.
Right, because a building is just a static structure until you run electricity through it. How do the biological wires carry a spiritual current?
It all comes down to the dual currents.
Because it seems like everything in these sources relies on the tension between opposites to create a central path.
Yes, the dual currents. This is where the physical neurology of the human body and the spiritual texts mirror each other with staggering precision.
It's kind of mind-blowing.
Let's look at chart number 6. It illustrates the electromagnetic currents and their proper anatomical relations.
When you look at it, it looks almost like a topography map of a mountain. But the lines of elevation are flowing up and down the human body.
Exactly. It shows 5 distinct energy currents sweeping from the top of the head and the fingers, cascading all the way down to the tips of the toes.
Wow.
And it notes something highly specific regarding the physical joints. It says the polarity of the current changes at the wrists, which is what makes joint movement possible.
Oh, that makes sense.
And it reverses its polarity at the ankles, changing direction entirely. The currents form a continuous dynamic loop. It creates an electromagnetic enveloping protection around the physical body.
And Chart 7 goes even deeper into how the brain governs this, right?
It does. It shows these energy waves flowing outward from each lobe of the brain. They cross over in the center of the face, winding down the body in an undulating figure-8 pattern.
The source literally draws it as a caduceus.
Yes.
The classic medical symbol with the 2 snakes winding their way up a central winged staff.
The caduceus is not just a mythic symbol here. In this context, it is a perfect schematic representation of the dual wireless brain energy waves operating within the human body.
They constantly polarize around a neutral core.
Exactly. And if we pull up our chart on the autonomic nervous system, we see the hard biological equivalent of this ancient esoteric symbol.
The actual wiring inside the flesh. Here's where it gets really interesting.
The autonomic nervous system is the control center for everything you don't consciously think about. Your heartbeat, your digestion, your pupil dilation.
Stuff on autopilot.
Right. And it is divided into 2 main opposing branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic.
Okay, break those down for us.
The sympathetic nervous system is our action pathway. The chart notes its physiological effects, mydriasis or pupil dilation, and increased heart rate, vasoconstriction where blood vessels tighten to push blood to the muscles.
And the release of epinephrine, right.
Yes. It is the fight or flight response. It is the outward thrusting active energy.
So mechanically speaking, it's the gas pedal of the human body.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the biological coin, we have the parasympathetic nervous system.
The brake pedal.
Yes. This is often called the rest and digest pathway, and it is heavily governed by the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve is everywhere right now in wellness spaces.
It is, and for good reason. It's a massive cranial nerve that wanders through the body like a fiber optic cable, connecting the brain to the heart, lungs, and gut.
So what happens when that's active?
When the parasympathetic system is active, it stimulates digestion, decreases the heart rate, and brings the body back to a state of profound repair and calm. It is indeed the brake pedal.
Okay, Here is where I need to push back, or at least play the role of the listener who might be experiencing some theological whiplash right now.
Understandable.
Because when we cross-reference this biological reality with the Sahaja Yoga chart in our stack, the spiritual mapping is profound, but it blends Orthodox Christian concepts with Eastern paradigms.
It does.
The Sahaja diagram shows three main channels of energy, the nadis. The right side, the Pingala or sun channel, maps to future action and the sympathetic nervous system.
The gas pedal.
Right. And the left side, the Ida or moon channel, maps to the past, to emotions, and the parasympathetic system, the brake pedal.
Yes.
But then the source explicitly defines these theologically. It states that God the Father, transcendent, is reflected through the left heart as the witness and spirit. And God the Mother, immanent, is described as being coiled in the sacrum bone at the base of the spine.
Yes, the Kundalini energy.
Right, so now we are taking the Holy Spirit, a deeply rooted Christian concept, and marrying it to Kundalini energy rising from the sacrum. How do these sources actually justify blending these two vastly different spiritual maps?
It's a vital question. It really requires us to look past the cultural vocabulary and look at the underlying mechanics of what is being described.
Okay.
The sacrum bone literally translates from Latin as the sacred bone.
Oh.
Across multiple ancient traditions, this lower pelvic basin was recognized as a massive reservoir of dormant potential energy.
Right.
What this text is doing is mapping the transcendent, unknowable nature of the Creator, the God who is beyond all things, to the quiet, observing spirit residing in the stillness of the heart.
The witness.
Exactly. And it maps the immanent, active, comforting, moving presence of God, the Holy Spirit, to this dormant, coiled energy at the base of the spine.
Wow.
When the Source talks about this energy awakening to give a second birth and new awareness, it is describing a tangible, physiological sensation of divine presence moving through the nervous system.
So it's not just a metaphor.
Not at all. The goal of this entire system is to balance the left and the right, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, the action and the emotion.
So that the central channel, the sushumna, can open.
Exactly.
So the central path of communion only opens when the biological gas pedal and brake pedal are in perfect equilibrium.
Precisely. You cannot sustain a state of pure communion if your body is flooded with cortisol and locked in a sympathetic panic state.
Right, you're too agitated.
Yes. Nor can you sustain it if you are completely lethargic and checked out in a collapsed parasympathetic state. You need balance.
And running straight up that central channel are the chakras. Now, let's be honest, the term chakra gets tossed around in modern wellness circles, Instagram aesthetics and corporate mindfulness retreats without much substance.
It's been very commercialized.
Yeah, it's usually reduced to, buy this crystal to balance your throat chakra. But the Sahaja Yoga text frames them brilliantly and incredibly relevantly for someone seeking Christ consciousness.
It really does.
It says, quote, "Each of the 7 chakras has several spiritual qualities. These qualities are intact within us, and even though they might not always be manifest, they can never be destroyed."
They aren't just spinning wheels of colored light. They are centers of spiritual refinement.
Virtues.
Yes, they are the prerequisite virtues required to safely hold and conduct the immense electrical and spiritual voltage of Christ consciousness.
Let's walk through them slowly, based on the chart, because it maps a perfect spiritual progression. At the very base, the first chakra, Muladhara, is mapped to innocence, purity, wisdom, and discrimination.
Think about what that implies. You cannot even begin the upward journey toward divine communion without first establishing a foundation of spiritual innocence and pure intention.
It is the bedrock.
It has to be.
Then you move up to the second, Swadhisthana, which is creativity and pure knowledge. The third, Nagi, located at the navel, is satisfaction, generosity, and inner peace.
Notice how that maps perfectly back to Dr. Stone's Chart 10.
Oh. Which labeled the navel area the fire of digestion.
Yes. Here, on a spiritual level, it is not just about digesting lunch. It is about digesting our life experiences.
Processing everything.
Exactly. It is about processing the events of our lives to find true inner peace and satisfaction, rather than constantly hungering for more worldly attachments. If the navel is tight with anxiety, you are spiritually malnourished.
That is a brilliant connection. Okay, then we move up to the fourth, the Anahat at the heart, representing love, confidence, security, compassion, and benevolence.
The center of the chest.
Right. The fifth at the throat, Vishuddhi, is communication and what the text calls the witness state.
Which is the ability to observe without immediate reaction.
So crucial. The sixth, Ajna, located at the forehead, is forgiveness, humility, and thoughtless awareness.
Look at that sixth center carefully. The gateway to the final stage of union is forgiveness and humility.
You can't fake that.
No, you cannot force or hack your way into the mind of Christ. You cannot intellectualize your way through the sixth center. You have to surrender, forgive everyone, including yourself, and completely humble the ego.
Which leads finally to the seventh, Sahasrara at the crown union with the self, integration.
If we connect this all back to the broader thesis presented in these documents, the Kundalini awakening mentioned in the Sahaja text isn't some frightening alien force that takes you over.
Which is what a lot of people fear.
Right. But the source defines it simply and profoundly as the physical sensation of pure desire rising through the central nervous system.
Pure desire.
As this desire for God rises, it literally nourishes these internal virtues: innocence, peace, compassion, forgiveness. As it passes through each center, it clears the debris, allowing our conscious mind to finally experience what the text calls the Paramakatanya.
The Paramakatanya. The text explicitly defines that as the all-pervading power of God's love.
Yes, a subtle power which does all living work and which cannot be felt at the level of human awareness until this central channel is open.
So if I'm the listener taking this all in right now, my nervous system is literally wired physiologically and biochemically to process both the transcendent Father in the stillness of my heart and the active, moving Holy Spirit rising through my spine.
That is exactly what we are saying.
Balancing my nervous system isn't just a trendy biohack to lower stress so I can be more productive at work. It is the biological prerequisite for that second birth awareness that Jesus talks about in the Gospels.
That is the exact synthesis these charts are pointing toward. Your biology is the staging ground for your theology.
Wow.
If the biology is in chaos, the theology remains purely theoretical.
Which brings us to a very practical, very physical problem.
The roadblocks.
Yes. If the spirit flows through these delicate electromagnetic pathways, and if our nervous systems are the conduits, and tension acts as a literal roadblock, then the way we hold our physical bodies matters immensely.
We have to clear the temple.
We must use specific bodily movements to clear the temple.
We must. The mind cannot easily transcend if the physical vessel is locked in a state of sympathetic fight or flight. If the fascia, the connective tissue wrapping every muscle and organ, is glued together by chronic stress, the energy currents are blocked by muscular and emotional armor.
This is where the asanas, the physical yoga postures, come into our Christ consciousness framework. I want to look back at Dr. Stone's Chart 9. It is titled The Therapy Chart of the Five-Pointed Star, and it focuses heavily on the pelvis.
It does. It notes a clinical reality. It says, the pelvic floor has a definite effect on anterior pelvic tension.
Okay.
And it states that this lower pelvic area is the sum total force accumulation of all the sensory tension and emotional frustration. It's the basin.
The basin. So gravity pulls fluid down.
But energetic gravity pulls unresolved emotional stress down into the hips and pelvic floor.
We pair that clinical observation from Dr. Stone with the specific text we have on pigeon pose.
This is a great connection.
The source says, quote, "It is a primal reaction of the people to store stress, fear, trauma, and anxiety in the hips. These bottled up feelings lead to the creation of tight hips."
Yes.
It goes on to say that pigeon pose helps in releasing negative feelings as well as the undesirable energy that is stored in the system.
Which is huge.
Right. So to use a modern analogy, having tight trauma-locked hips is like having a bunch of background apps running on your phone.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
You might not be looking at them, but they're constantly draining the battery, ensuring that the main software, the software of communion and presence, doesn't have the power it needs to run.
The background apps are eating up the bandwidth. So when you are folding forward over your bent leg in pigeon pose, experiencing that intense, sometimes uncomfortable stretch deep in the glute, the piriformis, and the hip flexor.
Sometimes very uncomfortable.
Right. You are not merely lengthening muscle tissue to improve your golf swing. You are applying a structural pressure to the very basin where, as Chart 9 showed us, emotional frustration crystallizes. When you stretch the fascia, you are actually tearing microscopic adhesions. You are facilitating a release of the static that blocks the central current.
Let me make sure I'm crystal clear on this mechanism. Doing a pigeon pose isn't just stretching a tight glute from sitting at a desk all day. It's literally wringing out the sponge of accumulated emotional trauma so the Holy Spirit has room to dwell.
Exactly. There is a brilliant principle in Dr. Stone's Chart 4 that explains this exact mechanism.
What does it say?
It says that the superior rules the inferior. The inferior reacts upon the superior by return current flow.
The superior rules the inferior. Okay, unpack that for us.
In this framework, the spirit, the energetic blueprint, the superior, ultimately governs the physical tissue, the inferior.
Got it.
Your emotional state dictates your posture. When you are afraid, you hunch forward. However, through the return current flow, the principle is reversible.
Oh, we can hack it backward.
Exactly. We can manipulate the physical tissue to send a signal back up the chain, altering the emotional and spiritual state.
So by stretching the hip,
By consciously releasing the physical grip of fear in the hips through a deep stretch, we send a chemical and electrical signal back up the vagus nerve to the brain. We signal to the nervous system that the threat is gone, that it is safe to enter the parasympathetic state.
the rest and digest, the brake pedal.
Right. We clear the path. We invite the spirit into that newly cleared space.
That is profound. It makes the physical practice deeply sacramental. It's not fitness, it's temple maintenance.
Temple maintenance. I like that.
Let's look at another major structural element, the spine. We have a source here breaking down the plank versus reverse plank and outlining a whole 30-day plank challenge working up to a 5-minute hold.
5 minutes is a long time.
It is. And the text notes that planking improves posture and, crucially, will help support your spine as well.
And why is the spine so absolutely critical in this esoteric framework? We refer back to the Kundalini flow chart we have.
The one with the spirals.
Yes, it shows energy literally spiraling up and around the spinal column. The text attached to that image states that when this potential energy is aroused from the sacrum, the maximum potential energy flow is released, energizing the entire endocrine system, creating unusual physiological, mental, emotional, and spiritual reactions.
The spine is the sushumna. It is the highway for the word made flesh.
It is the main thoroughfare.
If you have a weak core, if your abdominal oval is collapsing and your spine is constantly rounded and compressed, that energy, that rising desire for communion hits physical roadblocks.
The vertebrae pinch the nerves.
Right. The current is choked off. So holding a plank for 3 minutes isn't about getting a six-pack for the summer. It's about building a structurally sound, rigid conduit for the spirit to rise.
You are fortifying the central pillar of the temple so it can withstand the electrical voltage of deep spiritual experience.
Let's run through a few of the other specific postures detailed in our sources and view them through the specific lens of clearing the vessel. We have a chart dedicated entirely to child's pose.
Balasana. Child's pose. This is where you are kneeling, sitting back on your heels, with your chest resting on your thighs and your forehead resting on the floor.
Very common in yoga classes.
Very common. The source notes that it stimulates the reproductive organs, stretches the hips and shoulders, but it highlights this effect above all. The person's brain remains calm, eliminated depression, stress, and anxiety.
When you look at the geometry of it, it is the ultimate posture of surrender.
You are literally vowing down.
Yeah, you are taking the fire of intelligence from the head oval, all your plotting, your worrying, your intellectualizing, and you are physically placing it onto the earth, submitting your will.
It's beautiful.
Then we have Vajrasana, the simple kneeling pose. The source says it is a real bliss done after food to promote digestion and relax the body.
Connecting right back to the fire of digestion at the navel.
Right, from chart 10.
By sitting upright in Vajrasana, you are structurally aligning the abdominal oval to efficiently process. And in the context of Christ consciousness, we aren't just processing physical food.
No, we are digesting the energetic and emotional input of the day. We are sorting out what nourishes the soul and what needs to be eliminated.
Exactly.
Then there is Susarandrasana, the eye the needle pose. You are lying on your back, threading your arms through your legs to pull one knee toward your chest, stretching the outer hip.
Like a supine pigeon pose.
Yeah. And the text points out something very specific here. It says it puts a lot of pressure on the thyroid gland in the neck region, will improve the thyroid and pituitary gland, and it is more beneficial in stress, anxiety, and depression.
This is a perfect example of the return current flow we just talked about.
Because you're stretching the hip, but it affects the neck.
Right. You are stretching the physical tissue of the lower body, the inferior, which exerts a subtle fascial pull all the way up the spine, impacting the glandular function of the upper body, the superior.
Wow.
The thyroid, if you recall from chart 10, was labeled as the governor of oxygen intake within the sound reservoir of the throat. So this deep hip stretch directly impacts your biological capacity to breathe deeply and resonate with the word.
It's all connected. And finally, the back bends. We have a chart showing Bhujangasana, which is Cobra, Ustrasana, Camel, and Dhanurasana, bow pose.
Those are intense chest openers.
Very. The text says this works like magic on the entire spine, giving it the tightness required, and critically opens the chest and tones the muscles around it, thus improving the respiration.
You are expanding the airy region. You are physically opening the heart center, the Anahata chakra, which is the center of compassion and divine love.
Think about human biomechanics, right? When we are hurt, when we are afraid, we physically hunch forward to protect our vital organs.
We protect the heart and the belly.
Exactly. We build a cage of tension over our hearts. These back bends are physically pulling apart that protective armor. You are exposing the heart. You are making yourself physically vulnerable to the divine current.
There is a beautiful visual metaphor for this entire messy physical process in our stack.
Oh, the Unalum symbol?
Yes, the Unalum. It's a striking visual representation of the spiritual path.
The chart breaks down the symbol structure meticulously. At the very bottom, there's a tight spiral base, which symbolizes the starting point of life or the beginning of your spiritual awakening.
Right.
From there, the line winds back and forth in these wide, looping curves. The text says these lines indicate the path that your life takes. It's chaotic. It's swinging wildly from side to side.
Which sounds exactly like swinging wildly between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems.
Exactly. Between the left and the right nadis, fighting our physical tension before we find balance.
It is the struggle of the human condition. We overreact, we withdraw, we fight, we flee.
But then, the symbol transforms.
It does. As you move up the symbol, the loops get tighter and tighter, and eventually the chaos resolves into a perfectly straight line pointing directly upward, topped with a few distinct dots.
The source says the straightening of the line symbolizes becoming centered, wiser, and closer to enlightenment.
Or, in our specific framework today, coming into pure, unhindered communion with Christ consciousness.
The chaos of the lower nature is refined.
The physical vessel is cleared of its stored trauma. The nervous system finds its balance in the central channel. And the trajectory becomes a direct, unimpeded ascent toward the divine mind.
So we have the blueprint, we have the receiver built.
Yes. We have mapped the geometry of the body. We understand the dual currents of the autonomic nervous system.
We've used the asanas to wring out the trauma, clear the basin, and straighten the spine. The temple is clear.
So now we activate the ultimate tool.
The breath.
Yes, the mechanism that actually alters our state of consciousness to bridge the gap between the heavy flesh and the subtle spirit. Respiration is the only autonomic function of the body that you can consciously control.
It's the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious mind.
Exactly.
And if we look at the comprehensive breathwork document in our sources, it pairs perfectly with the chart on binaural beats and brainwave states. We are moving from the loud, chaotic noise of the world into the profound silence of the divine presence.
And we do it by literally, biologically, downshifting our brain waves through intentional respiration.
I want to spend significant time here because this is where the theory becomes practice.
Let's trace that progression down the ladder of consciousness. The brainwave chart starts at the absolute peak with gamma, but let's begin where almost all of us live our daily, waking lives. Beta waves.
Good old beta.
Beta is measured at 14 to 30 hertz. The chart associates this state with focused attention, high-level cognition, analytical thinking. But it also notes that it stimulates action and energy.
This is normal consciousness. This is you driving in traffic, answering 70 emails, planning dinner, and worrying about your mortgage.
It's busy.
It's necessary for survival in the modern world, but it is incredibly loud. The voice of the spirit in Christian tradition is famously described as a still, small voice.
Elijah didn't hear God in the earthquake or the fire.
Right, he heard him in the gentle whisper. You simply cannot hear a whisper over the roar of a 30 hertz beta wave brain state. To leave this state, we have to intervene. We use the breath.
The first step down the ladder is into alpha waves, measured at 8 to 14 hertz. The chart links this brain state to relaxed focus, positive thinking, stress reduction, and entering a flow state.
To get here from the chaos of beta, the breathwork text suggests balanced, rhythmic breathing to engage the parasympathetic nervous system.
The brake pedal again.
Yes. The text outlines box breathing or Samavriti. It is incredibly simple, but the biological mechanism behind it is profoundly effective.
How does it work?
You inhale through the nose for a count of 4, you hold the breath full for a count of 4, you exhale smoothly for 4, and then, and this is the crucial, often overlooked part, you hold the breath completely empty for 4. You repeat this cycle, visualizing tracing a square in your mind.
Let's look at the mechanism of why this works. When you breathe normally, in a stressed beta state, You are likely taking shallow chest breaths, blowing off too much carbon dioxide.
You're hyperventilating slightly?
Right. By slowing the breath to this 4-4-4-4 rhythm, you're allowing CO2 to gently build up in the blood. CO2 is a vasodilator. It literally opens up your blood vessels, lowering your blood pressure.
Wow, so it's a chemical shift.
It is. Furthermore, the deliberate holds force the mind to tether itself to a geometric pattern. It stops the analytical mind from spinning out into the future or the past. It perfectly balances the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems.
The text also suggests ultimate nostril breathing, or Nadi Shatana, to achieve this alpha state. You take your right hand, close the right nostril with your thumb, and inhale deeply through the left nostril.
Right.
Then you close the left nostril with your ring finger, open the right, and exhale right. Inhale right, close, exhale left. That's one cycle.
Which, as we learned earlier from the Sahaja Yoga chart, is not just about airflow. You are literally alternating the flow of energy between the eye to the moon, left, parasympathetic channel, and the Pingala of the sun, right, sympathetic channel.
You're manually forcing the balance.
By manually forcing the breath evenly through both sides, you are actively forcing your nervous system into equilibrium. You are centering the mind squarely in the Sushumna, the central conduit.
Okay, so now the static is gone, we are calm, we are in alpha, but we want to go deeper. We want to move beyond mere relaxation and enter a state of deep, resonant inner prayer.
So we step down the ladder again.
We step down to theta waves, measuring 4 to 8 hertz. The chart calls this the state of deep relaxation, inner peace, meditation, and access to the hypnopompic and hypnagogic state, which is that fluid, dreamlike threshold right before you fall asleep or wake up. The realm of visions.
For this specific frequency, the text provides a fascinating acoustic technique, Brahmari, or the humming bee breath.
There is a whole infographic dedicated to it in our sources.
Yes. You sit comfortably, close your eyes, and place your index fingers gently over the cartilage of your ears, blocking out external sound. You inhale deeply through the nose, and on the slow exhale, you make a steady, resonant hum sound, mimicking a bee.
The chart states that it is an instant way to relieve tension as well as anger and anxiety, and it improves the concentration and memory. But let's look at what is physically and spiritually happening here.
Spiritually, you are actively engaging the sound reservoir located in the throat oval that Dr. Stone mapped out in Chart 10.
Right.
By creating a continuous internal vibration, you are entirely drowning out the external world and drawing the mind inward. Biologically, that specific vibrational frequency physically vibrates the vocal cords and the surrounding tissues, which heavily stimulates the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve again.
Yes. The vagus nerve reads that vibration as a profound signal of safety, dropping you rapidly into a deep parasympathetic state, the realm of the immanent spirit. It creates a literal sonic cocoon inside your own skull for deep contemplation.
A sonic cocoon. I love that imagery.
Yeah.
You are building a sanctuary out of sound. And if we want to go to the absolute baseline, the deepest state of rest possible short of physical death, we enter delta waves, 0.1 to 4 hertz.
The absolute bottom.
The chart lists this as the realm of deep sleep, healing, access to unconscious mind, and anti-aging.
To consciously touch this waking sleep, the Breathwork Guide offers coherent breathing. This involves breathing at a perfectly balanced, continuous rate of 5 to 6 breaths per minute. Interestingly, this is the exact resonant frequency of the cardiovascular system. It harmonizes the heart rate variability.
Or the text offers the classic 4-7-8 breath. You inhale for 4, hold for 7, and exhale with a whooshing sound for 8.
By making the exhale twice as long as the inhale, you are aggressively applying the biological brake pedal. You are commanding the heart to slow down.
In a spiritual context, this delta state is the physical manifestation of resting entirely in God. The psalmist says, "Be still and know that I am God." In delta, you are embodying that stillness.
It is the total cessation of personal striving.
You are just resting in the presence.
But the Breathwork document doesn't end in silence. It introduces practices designed not just for calm, but for what it terms expanded awareness and psychedelic-like states.
Right, which are associated with high theta and gamma waves. Gamma is the highest frequency, 30 to 100 hertz, linked to peak awareness, transcendental states, and high-level information processing.
This is where we bring out the heavy artillery.
The intense stuff.
The text details a continuous or transformational breathing method, specifically for emotional catharsis. It instructs the practitioner to breathe continuously, usually through the mouth, in a circular fashion without any pauses between the inhale and the exhale for 10 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes of that.
Yes. And the explicit instruction is to welcome somatic tension and emotion.
So what's happening there?
You are intentionally flooding the biological system with oxygen and vital energy. By removing the pause in the breath, you override the conscious mind's inhibitory controls. You are unlocking the basement doors.
Opening it all up.
This allows the deep-seated somatic trauma, the emotional frustration locked in the pelvic basin we talked about earlier, to rise to the surface of consciousness and physically discharge. People often experience tetany where their hands cramp, or they begin to cry or shake as the blocked energy forces its way through the frozen fascia.
And then there is the apex practice listed, Wim Hof style or holotropic-inspired breathing, taking 30 to 40 deep, powerful, rhythmic breaths, fully in and letting go, and then on the final exhale, holding the breath empty for 30 to 90 seconds, or as long as comfortable.
Right.
The text notes this brings on lightness, visuals, expansion. Now, I have to play the skeptic again and contextualize this for you, the listener, because when people hear psychedelic-like states and visuals, they might think this is just spiritual tourism.
Chasing a high.
Exactly. In the framework of Christ consciousness, isn't there a danger here of just chasing a physiological high or a cheap trip?
That is a critical distinction to make. If your intention is simply to hallucinate or feel a rush of adrenaline, then yes, it is spiritual tourism, but that is not the intention of the framework.
So how do we frame it?
This is about entering a visionary state of deep, radical surrender. By hyperoxygenating the body, blowing off vast amounts of CO2 to induce a state of mild respiratory alkalosis, and then holding the breath in the empty void, you are fundamentally altering your blood chemistry.
You're hacking the system.
You are temporarily suspending the body's normal operating system. You are thinning the veil between the physical flesh and the spiritual realm. You are creating an extreme physiological environment that forces the ego to step aside, allowing the deep mind to experience the Paramakatanya, the all-pervading power, without the usual filters of the self.
It is an active, physically demanding form of prayer. It is not passive meditation. It requires the courage to intentionally step outside of your normal sensory boundaries, confront whatever trauma rises to the surface, and completely trust the internal architecture we've been mapping out today.
It is the physical embodiment of kenosis,
Yes.
self-emptying.
Yes.
You literally empty the lungs, empty the blood of its normal balance, and empty the mind, making room for the divine to enter.
So we've covered massive ground today. We've gone from esoteric maps of the universe to the biochemistry of a breath hold. What does this all mean for you, the listener, sitting at home or walking your dog or driving in your car right now?
It means that you are not locked out of the divine experience. It means you have a complete, progressive toolkit encoded into your very biology. You don't have to seek out a guru on a mountain.
Exactly. You don't have to be an ascetic living in a cave to experience this. You have the tuning dials right now.
They're built in.
If you are in the middle of a chaotic workday and your sympathetic nervous system is screaming, you can use box breathing for exactly 3 minutes to find the presence of the spirit in the center of the storm.
Right.
If you are carrying the heavy emotional weight of a difficult year, you can use pigeon pose and deep fascial stretching to release that trauma from your physical basin. Or, if you are prepared, you can dedicate an hour to holotropic-style breathing to actively seek a profound, altered state of communion with the divine. Your body is the instrument. You just have to learn how to play it.
You are the operator of nature's geometric keyboard. The music it plays is entirely up to your willingness to tune the instrument.
What an incredible paradigm-shifting journey we've been on today. Let's try to synthesize all of this one last time. We started with the seemingly murky, imprecise waters of physical and spiritual diagnosis, and we discovered an incredibly precise divine blueprint.
We mapped the geometric tabernacle of the body.
Recognizing the ultrasonic core, the primary energy of the soul, and the elemental resonance of our physical regions, from the airy heart to the watery pelvis.
We observed the dual electromagnetic currents of our nervous system, mapping the biological realities of the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches to the spiritual realities of the Ida and Pingala. We saw how balancing the left and right, the transcendent witness and the immanent spirit, is the biological key to opening the central channel of communion.
We looked at the asanas, the physical postures, not as mere exercise or fitness goals, but as profound structural methods for wringing out stored trauma, clearing the physical pathway for the spirit to rise, and straightening the chaotic unalome of our life's path into a direct ascent.
And finally, we explored the mechanics of the breath as the ultimate tuning dial, shifting our brainwaves from the loud, beta wave noise of the modern world into the profound, resonant silence of the mind of Christ, through alpha, theta, and delta states.
Before we sign off, there is one final, deeply provocative concept hidden in these sources that I want to leave you with. It comes from chart number 24 in Dr. Stone's work titled The Law. To every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction.
This chart is staggering. It illustrates the physics of the entire universe using massive spirals of energy.
Yeah, on one side, it shows the positive condition, the inward compression of light, resulting in what it calls incandescent suns. On the other side, it shows the negative condition, the outward expansion of light into what it calls evacuated black holes in space.
And the text underneath this cosmic map says this: pairs of opposites are simultaneously born from each other. The mutual giving of each borns each from the other simultaneously. Balanced interchange is sequentially repeated.
Read that again carefully. The incandescent, radiant, burning sun and the completely empty, evacuated black hole are born at the exact same moment, from the exact same mutual giving. They rely on each other for existence.
So here's the thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Think about that apex breathwork practice. When you are sitting in the stillness and you exhale completely, blowing every last ounce of air out of your lungs, and you sit holding that breath in the empty void when you feel totally physically and spiritually empty, what if those moments of deepest physical emptiness are the exact simultaneous moments that the incandescent, radiant light of Christ consciousness is actually born within you?
It raises a profound theological and physical question about the very nature of grace. Does true spiritual fullness require the total willing creation of an internal void? Is kenosis the total self-emptying of one's own breath, one's own ego, one's own will, not just a nice moral idea, but the absolute required physics of divine communion?
If the physics chart is right, the light simply cannot be born without the simultaneous creation of the empty space to hold it. You have to empty the vessel to fill the temple.
It is a beautiful, terrifying mystery to inhabit.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the flesh and the breath of the spirit. We invite you to experiment with the breathing rhythms and the postures on your own. See what you discover in those quiet, empty spaces between the breaths. Remember how we started talking about the murky diagnostic waters and the broken X-ray machine? Well, the medical X-ray might not show the soul, but it turns out the tabernacle is functioning perfectly. The wiring is flawless. You just have to learn how to turn on the lights. Until next time.